This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
Choose the most unusual matches. Choose the best of the WWF. Choose wrestling's biggest, smallest and strongest. Choose Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, Roddy Piper's greatest hits, and wrestling's bloopers, bleeps and body slams. Choose George the Animal Steele. Choose the Ken Patera story. Choose the life and times of Captain Lou Albano. Choose the Hulkamania series. Choose the Ultimate Warrior. And choose Macho Man Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth. Choose WWF World Tour, Smack 'em Whack 'em, and UK Rampages 91, 92 and 93. Choose a journey back in time. Choose Seen Your Video. It's time for everyone to dust off the VCR and plug it back into the television set as we take a trip into the Coliseum Home Video Vault with your host, Rory McNamara.
Nation, welcome to episode 11 of Seen Your Video. My name is Rory McNamara. Yes, I'm back once again to root around the attic for the very best and indeed worst the home video classics section of the WWE Network has to offer. Today I welcome back a guest you heard on episode 7. Chris Lacey from the Wrestling 20 Years podcast is here again. Chris, how are we doing that, man?
Wunderbar. I have a beer on the go and get to talk about my childhood.
He's starting early, everybody. It's 1 p.m. here in the UK at the moment, and Lacey is already on the Bud Light. So he's got his priorities right, and I'm very pleased to be able to tell. I don't even have a cup of tea with me here, everybody. So Mr. Lacey is stealing a march on us here. Chris, those who listened to you on episode 7 will know that you are very much a fan of Mr. Ultimate Warrior, as we must address him. And you said on that episode that you wanted to come back and do the second Ultimate Warrior video that is available on the network. So, Chris, what video are we watching today?
Ultimate Warrior 1992.
He's been champing. Ever since the Ultimate Warrior 89 video, he's been desperate to do that, and now he has had his chance. Getting in there in the first 1 minute and 30 seconds, I expected nothing less. So, Chris, when we left the Ultimate Warrior 89 video, he was still dealing with Rick Rude, trying to get revenge and the IC title back. We did not see him win it at SummerSlam. So we jump ahead to 1992 with Ultimate Warrior here, Chris, and we crash right into the tape, no messing here. A cold open, or indeed a very hot one, because we begin at the very end of Wrestlemania VIII, with Mr. Hulk Hogan, as we must not address him, being beaten down by Sid and Papa Shango in the aftermath of their Wrestlemania VIII main event. Sadly, this time we do not get to see Sid kicking out of the leg drop, but what you going to do? But we do get to see somebody making their surprise return. And I do wonder how well at the time this one was kept under wraps. The crowd certainly weren't expecting it. And I've got to be honest, I get a bit of a chill every time when Ultimate Warrior, a little bit leaner this time, bit of a bob haircut, sorted himself out just a tiny bit, makes his return to clear the ring of the heels, and all is right with the world again. Chris, I bet when you watched this one on the tape a few days ago, you were transported all the way back to April 92.
I was, and also transported back to the conversations that we had in school at the time, because people thought that was a different Warrior because of the bob haircut and the fact that he wasn't as roided to the gills, shall we say. When it was like the talk in school, because obviously this was when I was 8, that people did think that it was a new person that was the Warrior because it looked too different. I, for one, was like, unless they've got someone whose face looks exactly the same, it's still the same Warrior. He's just had a soccer mum haircut, and clearly, not lifting as much because obviously at those points we didn't realise that they were on roids. Being 8, you don't think about steroid abuse and all the wonderful things of the 80s. But yeah, no, that was the big remembrance of this point when Warrior came back, that everyone was like, that's a different guy.
I think he has dropped probably about 15, 20 pounds of something. I will leave it up to the listener base to decide exactly what it is he might have dropped at that point. But I said the word leaner, that might be it. Just not quite as built out. I'm trying to be as polite as I can here because you never know who might be listening. Okay, were there any suggestions in the playground, Chris, as to who it might have been?
See, this is the thing. No one had an idea of who was the other guy. They just thought it was some new guy being the Ultimate Warrior, because obviously it's one of those things of, because of the face paint, it can be someone easy. And obviously, the sort of month or so after the debut, pretty much all his matches were squashes, so the face paint stayed completely on. Mm-hmm. Whereas obviously, as we all know, 80s Warrior, face paint would come off really fucking quickly, and there was a load of sort of, you know what kids are like, they're like, oh, someone different. But yeah, no one had ideas of who it was. Obviously, being over here in the UK, we're not exposed to like everything. I think at that point WCW might have started on ITV, but you had to be a fucking wrestling fan and want to find wrestling to see that.
Oh yeah,
because of it being on at fucking stupid o'clock on a Saturday morning.
Yep.
It wasn't something that the kids that would watch Superstars on at 9 on a Saturday morning on Sky One, and then watch Wrestling Challenge at 5, aren't going to be the ones that are looking out for WCW. They're not, like I was. It was like, I fucking love wrestling and need to find it. Even to the point of watching Eurosport to watch Lucha. Because randomly Lucha would be on Eurosport like once every few fucking months and be like, I have no idea who these guys are. I have no idea what the fucking rules are, but fuck, I love these spins. But yeah, no. So as I said, I don't think that was a point of. Right, if it had been another 4 or 5 years later when WCW was more sort of readily available, then there might have been a bit more of a sort of talk of, well, who could it be? And then you just started getting fucking weird and one mix. For us over here, there wouldn't have been that conversation. Obviously, it would have been in the States and obviously exposed to territorial wrestling and all of the old shit. Obviously, every local area having its own fed, then there may have been a bit more talk of conspiracies and who it could be. But I think over here in the UK, I think it was more of a case because we only had the Fed, and if you remember World of Sport, there wouldn't have been that sort of thing of, oh, it's some lad from World of Sport going over, is it? So
I would have thought that would be.
It's Rollerball Rocco is now called Warrior.
We need to do a World of Sport special one day, I think. The reason I brought up suggestions as to who the other Warrior might have been, if you jump back to Royal Rumble 92, I swear this is what the New York crowd and how they react. When dear old Kerry Von Erich emerges through the curtain, obviously he's got his tassels on, got his hair all over the shop, walks out, doesn't run out, walks out, but casts his hands to the heavens. I swear the enormous pop he gets is because people think that Big Jim has returned at the Rumble. I swear that's why. Pop dies away very, very quickly. Oh, it's just old crazy old Kerry. But just for a second there, crowd thought they were getting it 3 months early. I stand by that, I really do.
Though, this is the thing, is like the thing with Kerry Von Erich, because obviously they went in Texas Tornado, the modern day Warrior, in alternative booking timelines, so it could have been quite easy to push him to be Warrior.
Yeah, I never thought of that. It's true. It could have been. I could see where it comes from. Let's say that.
He was the light version of Warrior. Obviously, didn't have the face paint and stuff, and as much roids in his body, but definitely the same amount of coke.
Yes, in that respect, if not others, I'm sure Kerry Von Erich would have foot the bill. Thank you very much. You've got to, haven't you? You've got to. Just humour me, Chris. When you were watching Eurosport in the early 90s, and I know this reference won't mean much for our American listeners, but was Jeff Stelling doing the commentary?
I genuinely can't remember.
Because he was at Eurosport at that time, and he says they would have him doing voiceover commentary on any sport under the sun, regardless of whether or not his interest and knowledge of it. He's talked about before that he was often roped into doing European fencing championships or something. Ooh, what a hit. So The idea of Jeff Stelling commentating on early 90s Lucha, I really hope that happened.
Oh, that would be beautiful.
But not any longer, Charlie Nicholas. Yeah, see, it's all there. It's all there. Okay. Anyway, let's get back to this videotape. So after a brief, and I do mean brief, intro from Sean Mooney.
That dramatic entrance by the Ultimate Warrior at Wrestlemania VIII signaled to the world that he was back and ready to roar. It was only fitting that the Ultimate Warrior shared fireworks and center ring with the immortal Hulk Hogan. For it was at Wrestlemania VI that the two sealed their destiny.
They really did put this one together very quickly. We get the small matter of Ultimate Warrior versus Hulk Hogan from WrestleMania VI in a match you might have heard of. Now, in all seriousness, I don't think there's anybody with even the most cursory interest in pro wrestling who may or may not have stumbled across this show who is unaware of the existence of that match, and also, like me and Chris and everybody else, has watched it multiple times. I'm sure you have. However, we do have a slightly different presentation on this tape, in that we have dubbed in new commentary. Jesse Ventura, of course, by 1992, long since persona non grata with the Fed. Gorilla gets to do the match again, and dear old Lord Alfred Hayes is bringing his very excitable self to this. I've just got a couple of quotes from there before we talk about the match. Lord Alfred Hayes doesn't seem to know what year this match took place. Was it a year ago? Was it 2 years ago? Ah, bless him. He also thinks that billions of people watched this one live at the time, which is probably a bit of a stretch. Undercover burn by Gorilla here when Hogan goes out and sells his knee, or doesn't sell his knee. Here's Gorilla on commentary. He has forgotten about the pain in his right knee. Completely forgotten about it. Would you like some aloe vera for that? Kerwin Silpies gets a name check for his professional abilities, so that's nice. So, Chris, no need for me to do a play-by-play for this match. Everybody knows it. But if you do want to hear more about it, then do check out the Place to Be podcast, episode 540, where Scott, Justin, and JAD looked at WrestleMania VI in very, very, very painstaking detail, including this match. But, Chris, you now have the opportunity to wax lyrical about Ultimate Warrior's crowning achievement. So I'm just going to sit back, and you can just let it rip.
So first things first, obviously we will have just, as you've mentioned, the loving from Al on Weird and Wonderful Things on the commentary. His loving on the camera work and how artistic the camera work is for all WWF shows, as he put it, and the fantastic work of Kerwin. I was watching it with my other half, and she was just fucking giggling at the loving on the camera work and cameraman's techniques, and it was just like says everything about these redub. Al's loving on Hogan was a bit weird, with the whole he'll be back, he's ready to go back, he's ready to come back. I've just spoke to him, he's ready to get into the ring at a moment's notice. This is meant to be about the Warrior.
Yes.
Anyone think that, because obviously this was released in November of 92, wasn't that just at the point when Warrior left? So did they know something when doing this commentary?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. He was gone before Survivor Series. They were hyping up the tag team match against Flair and Razor, where he teamed up with Savage. So it did happen very quickly when he did get the boot at the same time as Dave Boy, I believe. So it's interesting. It does add up.
Because it just seemed that there was still praise for the Warrior in the commentary, but it was very much more Hogan led, and
yeah, that's really
there was a few more digs than you would expect. But that may be just me being a bit of a conspiracy nut and going, I know what the Fed are like.
Conspiracy nut. Jesse Ventura's not commentating on this version.
But yeah, it's the thing. It's like it took away a little bit with this redub on the commentary of what is a fucking classic match. As I've said before on here, and I said on 20 years ago and other stuff when we've done bits, that I got into wrestling in 90. This was my first Mania. This was the first video that I bought. I have seen this match hundreds of times, and I still love it. This guy's crazy. He comes from who knows where. Parts unknown.
Parts unknown.
Is he an alien? Who the fuck? We don't know, but I'd go with this guy, and he's multicolored, and really, really crazy. So, this was where my love-in really did start. Warrior, as I said, it's the first thing I saw. Warrior fucking come in, Billy Two Belts, fuck you, Bailey, he did it first. And it is just the pinnacle of Warrior at that point, up until the match with Savage, which, should be on more things and be seen by more people, because it's a forgotten gem of just how good Warrior could be when told what to do. But the thing is, this is a nigh on perfect match, because it's the only time that a face really worked, because both of the faces used underhand tactics as faces. Hogan with his big closed fist punches and his back rakes, and he still was able to do all of his shit. Warrior with his just weird running and throwing people into the post and stuff works. They both do their fucking Hulk up moments. Hogan with his gammon face, shuddering around like he's a Brexiteer. No.
Oh, I don't want to. No, I don't want to think about that. It's bad enough when he was interviewed on 5 Live by Richard Bacon. How and why do I know this? In 2011, just at the time where the benefits cap was coming in, and he went on air to say that he supported it. So I can see where the gammon link comes from. Chris, please move on.
So yeah, no, it's one of these matches that it works. It is 1990 encapsulated in what wrestling was. In a way, it was the perfect end to the 80s as well, because Hogan was the guy of the 80s. We thought at the time Warrior was going to be the guy for the 90s. Flashy neon colours, the face paint. He was the same but different. And yeah, it takes me straight back to my childhood. Is it a 5-star Meltzer classic? Is it? Fuck. But it takes me back to being 6, and fuck you, that is me, and I fucking still love it.
It can't date, in my opinion. 31 years ago, as we record this show, it hasn't dated at all. It's completely and utterly a product of its time. Early 90s, passing of the torch from the 80s to the 90s. The 90s, if you will. Thank you, Chart Music Podcast, for giving me that one. Without a doubt, it's April the 1st, 1990. But I still think in 31 years from now, people will still be able to watch this match, and I'll still be able to enjoy it, broadly speaking, the same way. Because it is not, in any way, shape or form, a work rate classic. They both work hard in it. They were drilled. Pat Patterson laid this match out from start to finish, and he made sure they hit every single mark, and there were a lot of them, and they did for 25 minutes, as non-stop as you're going to get out of these two. In that respect, it was a work rate match, I suppose. And I don't really like the term work rate, to be honest with you, but because it just feels like two gods colliding, the sort of thing you would imagine taking place 6 stratospheres above the earth, when there's the ultimate challenge piece at the beginning. Vince narrated the stars and the seas and the galaxies. That's exactly what this match is, personified. It is like two gods going at it. And the fact that they do match each other move for move, in the very literal sense, where they're really both doing the same moves to each other for 25 minutes, you still get wrapped up in it, because that is what these two are going to do. They are going to throw bombs and lightning bolts at each other. That's how it is going to work. It's the only way that one of these men is going to beat the other. And in any form of entertainment, where it comes down to the two big people at the end, with the added bit of sprinkling of fairy dust that they are both good guys as well, getting dirty, as Jesse says on the original commentary, I don't see how anybody, any fan of any kind of entertainment, still will not be able to enjoy this match many years into the future. I don't see how they can't. I wasn't watching wrestling at the time. I didn't start watching wrestling until 96. But every time I do watch this match, I might as well have been there in the Sky Dome on April the 1st, 1990. And the word iconic is just so overused these days. It's not even true, but it really is an iconic match.
it's the thing with this. There are only two matches that I would say, or two other matches that I would say live up to the WrestleMania name the same as this does. Hogan Rock and that second Shawn Taker match. And that's it. Everything else, there's been fucking classics at Mania. One of my favourite matches of all time is at Mania was Bret and Owen. But that level of build, the level of star, and how the crowd and everything with it all together, those three, and Hogan Warrior, Hogan Rock, and that second Shawn Taker, and they all have that. Two of the biggest guys at the time, and the Rock Hogan case of different generations, and the build is right, the story is right, the crowd are fucking there, and other than the Shawn Taker, Rock Hogan's not a wrestling classic. It's not a fucking clinic, but everything is right for that story, that build, and those guys. They stand there as like fucking pinnacles of what a WrestleMania match should be. And in this sort of let's do 7-star fucking Tokyo Dome, all the kids want to do and hit 75 million flips. Look at those. Look at how simple it can be if the build is right, the story's right, and the guys are right. That's what you should be aiming to do. And the thing is, in none of those matches are anyone is going to get properly hurt because they're not doing shit that's stupid.
Absolutely. Two superheroes hurling Hadoukens at one another for 25 minutes.
Yeah.
Don't ever tell me that's going to get old. It won't.
Fuck it. Marvel have made
there
a fucking whole year. What is it? 12, 13 years now? The MCU?
Yep.
And each time they bring a new film out, it breaks the record from the one before for how many people are spending money to go and see it. It's not hard.
No, it's really not. It's a match where I feel very bad critiquing. And I could probably sit down for hours and break it down, but I'm not going to. It's unfair to the match. And it's unfair to the millions of people who at the time, and perhaps even more importantly, now in 2021, still enjoy this amazing match. Right up there in the pantheon for me. This is the WWF. I think I've used the phrase a couple of times already. Passing of the torch. It could well have been the accidental end of what we know as the Federation era. I don't think we knew that at the time, or we would have known that at the time. Warrior's title run is probably a discussion for another day. It's completely excised from this tape, perhaps with good reason. When Hogan there presents the belt to Warrior and everybody watches him leave, which of course was his plan, that's where the 80s ends for me. And we're just 3 months away from Paul Gascoigne crying on the pitch at Turin. There's a perfect symmetry there, I'm sure you'll agree.
Yeah.
I hope Thomas Berthold's listening to this. Anyway, there we go, Hogan Warrior. Yeah, just one more very technical point, Chris. I have to bring this up. I don't want to bury Hogan. No, I want to bury Hogan as much as we can. So let's get on with it. Does it rankle with you, as it does annoy me to this day, that he doesn't grant Warrior a kick out of the leg drop? Warrior just has to merely avoid it. Right at the very end. Rather than Warrior kicking out of the leg drop,
that's the one that doesn't
to avoid it.
That's the one that doesn't bug me. The one that bugs me is Hogan kicking out at 3.1.
Yes, I was getting to that too.
That bugs me more than him not hitting the leg drop.
Okay.
Because at the point, obviously, this was still when people didn't kick out with finishers. Finishers were finishers. So, the whole point of Warrior missing it and being able to get away from it, I don't have a gripe with. It's cunt Hogan at the end and his fucking 3.1. Oh, I've kicked out, and the bull. All right, I like the whole point of him handing the belt to him, but it's the pissing around beforehand and he still had to make it about him.
Yeah, exactly. The subtext is very clear when he presents Warrior the belt. It's about Hogan losing it, not Warrior losing it. He fucking knew what he was doing. Yeah, the kick out at 3.1. Yeah, that's bloody horrible, isn't it? And even afterwards, the very first thing Hogan does, bastion of gratitude that he is, he points to the sky to say he nearly kicked out. He explicitly makes clear he does that right in front of the hard camera as well. Anyway, this tape is not about Hogan. It is about Warrior. So, also, Chris, I should say as well, I was expecting this match to be clipped, but it was definitely the whole thing.
Yeah,
I couldn't see any edits on this one.
No, it's the full thing. As I said, the only thing they cut is obviously at the end where obviously Warrior holds up both belts and the fireworks go off behind him, which is an image that I absolutely love, and I had the figure for years in the box, but lost it when moving. But yeah, there's missing that, but other than that, it is the whole of the match in full.
So after that, as I said, we miss out Warrior's title run completely. We don't see how he lost it. We don't get anything from the match against Savage at 7, which is interesting. SummerSlam 91, perhaps a slightly less surprising omission. But we jump right ahead to a dark match, I believe, and a Coliseum exclusive, as so many of these matches I get to do are, taped very shortly after WrestleMania VIII, so my research tells me, against Papa Shango. Don't expect play-by-play for this one, everybody, or for the other 3 matches we've got going. I'll be wasting my time. I'd be wasting yours. It's an Ultimate Warrior versus Papa Shango match shortly before their feud begins. Chris, Warrior versus Papa Shango. You were talking about 7-star classics just now. I think I know why.
Oh, this is just a fun fucking match. I love Warrior. I love Papa Shango again because of my age. That's Charles Wright's best character. Fuck Godfather. Fuck the Godfather. I give me Papa Shango all day long. Obviously, they slightly mention it in one of the later matches about the curse, because they don't show anything of it. I do wish they would have, shown some of that.
I was in the mood for seeing Warrior puking up on this one, but we don't get it.
The whole Papa Shango's curse on Warrior. I was just like, get this in my veins. This was like perfect as a kid. I fucking loved it. The black mess going down off the face paint, and the convulsing, and the foot going on fire after a match. I forgot about that bit. Yeah. Oh my. Fucking loved this shit when I was a kid. And I don't think the payoff ever actually was shown on telly.
Oh, there's no big match blow off that I'm aware of. Somebody correct me, but I can't think of it.
Because obviously they intermingle. Obviously, there's another match later on in the tape where they intermingle again. But obviously, this, as you said, was taped pre the TV debut of the curse. And it would not have been a great match. We know that this would have been what we got, which is fine. It's fun. Papa Shango gets some shit in. Looks like he might actually get an advantage, and then Warrior does Warrior. And I'm happy as fuck for that. And, that is what Warrior should be doing. Did love seeing Joey Morella, one of my favourite refs from that time period, who obviously sadly lost his life not long after that. But, it's one of those of, I just wish that, they'd have shown the cursing stuff on this video, even just before this match, because then they could have just blagged that was the blow off, and that we actually did really get a proper blow off for it. But yeah, fun, not going to complain. There's less than 5 minutes.
Yeah,
I'll take this on a tape.
It's interesting that none of the curse stuff does get shown. I wonder if by this point, am I giving the WWF too much credit by suggesting they might have been embarrassed? Vince embarrassed by anything? Certainly not at this time period, so maybe not. It's an odd omission. I was expecting to see at least a bit of it, but it's completely excised on these tapes. So it's just pure Warrior matches. But then, what more could you really want? I'm going to jump ahead to the next 2 matches, because they both occurred on Superstars in the May of 1992, on May 2nd and May the 16th. We've got one versus our old friend Skinner, which is a total squash. 2.5 stars all the way. And a slightly more competitive match against Brian Knobbs, say 2 weeks later, where Jerry Saggs gets involved in this one. Warrior even takes a chair shot, and just for a millisecond it looks like it might lose, but reality kicks in again very quickly, and he is victorious. Christopher, Warrior versus Skinner and Warrior versus Brian Knobbs. This is why I have you on these shows.
So the Skinner match, I forgot how rancid Skinner was.
Rancid. That's an adjective and a half.
He came out gobbing chew and gobbed his chew in Warrior's face, then gets hit. I can't remember if it was a clothesline or a punch, and then chunked out another gob of chew as well.
Oh, God.
And I was just like, you dirty git. But I can't remember who he was, because I'm pretty sure he was like someone that was half decent in like NWA days.
Steve Kern, yeah.
Yeah. And then they just went with like bottom feeder rancid oik.
There he is, the alligator man.
But
that's your character.
It also harks back to a time when I think, other than this, the actual gimmick itself is fucking disgusting, but the idea of having designated guys that were still jobbers but had a character and had a purpose for being there, you know, the likes of a Repo Man or fucking Barry Harwitz or things like that, instead of it being like where we've got to now, where it's mid-card guy A versus mid-card guy B, and no one gets better for that because it's just people running the fucking wheels, where you had people to make stars with.
Right.
I do wish we can go back to that.
I'd love to see that again. I really, really.
You know, I'm not asking for nameless jobber A and nameless jobber B in a fucking hood, but you know, if you think like Kurt Hawkins was the last person that.
There's a name job.
You know, but his purpose was that he was, you know, we knew who he was, but he lost.
Mm-hmm.
I would just wish we could go back to that instead of having fucking, you know, I haven't watched fucking Raw or SmackDown in 2 years now, but I'd say, you know, Big E versus one of the Usos. Who does that help? You know, and then they'll do the same match with the other Uso versus another one, a New Day, and then go to a tag match. It's like, but you're just having the same fucking matches all the time.
Yeah, it's just endless, isn't it?
Build people.
Endless with no beginning, middle, and a designated conclusion point. Things just, this is discussion for another podcast, but things just happen. There's no real rhyme or reason to it. Here, I understand why Warrior is squashing Skinner in 2 minutes. I understand why he's taking on Brian Knobbs 2 weeks later, and why Jerry Saggs is there, and what the bigger picture is. Mr. Shango, heels Union, taking this opportunity to try to protect the curse. And yes, it doesn't really stand up to much scrutiny when you say that, but everything there is happening for a reason. It needs to exist to tell that story, and that's long gone, I'm afraid.
Yeah, it just harks back to a simpler time. Old man stares at clouds, points and shouts.
Brush his tear away from eye. There we go.
But yeah, the Skinner match was, as you say, it was pretty much just a fucking
pure squash. Just
in, let him do his nasty gobbing of his chew and then fuck him up. The Nasty Boys one, again, is a squash match, but with some fucking psychology there, because it's technically a handicap match. You know,
Mm-hmm.
They both double team. I love the bit when he tries to go for Pity City and he turns it round and puts Knobbs' face in Saggs' tits. Yeah, get that. I also love the fact that when Saggs hits him with the chair, he walks off thinking, everything's done, wonderful, which is perfect fucking heel storytelling of like, yep, won this, my job's done, ha 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 ha, we've won, only to find out that your boys then gone and lost. Perfect TV wrestling.
I do love these editions of Superstars. I could watch them all day. I really could. Pure comfort food.
And you know, perfect on the call. Vinnie Mac before we all knew that he owned everything, shouting and hollering and what are manoeuvres. Yeah, I think there might be a new thing for the 20 years ago feed once the other two have gone. Just to go back and just like do all the superstars ran.
Oh, talking my language.
Just watch 45 minutes of glorious fucking 90s TV.
Yep, just that's an arrow through my heart, Mr. Lacey. And you're very much talking to the right person about that as well. I'll be in touch. I definitely will. Oh, what a fantastic idea that is. We have the freedom. We're down to one promotion from March of this year onwards on the Wrestling 20 Years Ago podcast. We've got to fill our time somehow. So
Or, cross-promote it with this as well.
Of course. Oh, yeah, I do a lot of that, don't you worry. It's all very... I make it as incestuous as I possibly can. Well, incestuous between me and me, so just think about that one for a second. And while you're contemplating that image, let's talk about the final match on this tape, which I have talked about before on Seeing Your Video. If you go back to episode 3, Rampage 92, as chosen by my friend Callum McDougall, we discussed the Warrior and the Undertaker teaming up to take on Papa Shango and the Berserker. So I've already talked about this one. And Chris, once again, this is your opportunity. Much like with the WrestleMania, perhaps even more than the WrestleMania 6 match, this is what it's all about. So I'm just going to sit back for the next 5 or 6 hours now.
Oh, you give me a fucking big time frame on that then. Oh, this again, just simple fucking storytelling, get in my veins, because I remember the Berserker Taker feud at this point when he tried to stab him with his sword and put the sword through the ring, and I was like, I'm about to see a fucking murder on wrestling. The weird Viking guy is going to kill the dead guy. And the thing is, you say that sentence out loud in the wrong circles, and people will think you're fucking talking mental. You say that in a wrestling circle, and people know exactly what you're on about. Wrestling.
It is. It's like the Masonic handshake, isn't it?
But again, this is, you know, at the time, two guys that don't do tag matches teaming up. Both of them have their sort of, we're doing what we would do in a normal match. Obviously, they double team and beat down Taker for a bit. He then gets up, starts doing his own shit, and then remembers, oh fuck, I'm meant to tag. Warrior then comes in, rinse and repeat, and again also goes, oh shit, I'm meant to tag. I fucking love the end. With Taker looking about that he's going to double choke slam them and just shoves them into Warrior, hit him with a double clothesline.
Yeah, that's very good.
For guys that have never worked together, whoever came up with that finish, can of Coke for you. To steal another show's saying.
We have been infiltrating. I've been on the air 40 minutes. About 5 other podcasts have been quoted already, so add another one to the list.
You know, it is just like fucking, yeah. It's the sort of shit that obviously, cause it's a house show match, you know, it isn't going to be on telly. You know, it was done for a video, for fuck's sake. If you're at that show and you see that, you're going home happy. You know, it is what you expect to see at a house show, and you know, it continues the feuds going on. Obviously, because at the time, both of the feuds were at the same time, so they were both at the point continuing. Because it's pre SummerSlam, so it's pre Warrior trying to get the title off Macho. You know, it just makes sense. And as I said, 8-year-old me, if I was at the show and that match was on, would have been losing my utter shit.
I bet you would have been. So do you reckon there was a case ever that Warrior and Undertaker could have made a team of some description other than just for a Coliseum video exclusive house show matches? It's quite the concept to think about.
It's something now I'm thinking about. I never knew I wanted, but I sort of do.
It's all there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like, you know, thinking having Bray and Taker together as a tag team before, you know, he went full Fiend and had all the Wyatt family. It's something that you never think you should want, but thinking about it would work perfectly. Warrior and Taker together. I think I want it.
Yeah, let's keep on dreaming about that one, Mr. Lacey. The chances of it happening now, I'd say, are rather slim.
It can happen on 2K.
Oh god, yeah. Okay, the good versions of 2K. Yeah, you're not going to buy it 20, I hope.
No, but I did buy it for shits and giggles because it was on in like the PlayStation sale last year around Mania time. So I got the collector's edition, which was like 120 quid for 15. and played through the story mode once just to see how bad it was, and then haven't turned it on since.
I was going to wager probably not many giggles, but a lot of shits would be my description.
Oh, it is fucking hilarious. Me and the other half she was watching me play it and going, this is a PlayStation 1 game with level graphics and utter shit, but fucking hilarious.
I haven't broached it myself, but I've heard from many reputable sources, yourself included, and steer well clear. I have been playing Battleground recently, though. I got that for Christmas, and yes, very much a turn your brain off game, I think it's fair to say there. I mean, I'm not somebody who dives into a great deal of complexity with games normally. I'm a pick up and play bash 'em up kind of person, but even I would say I probably prefer something a little more taxing than press X to do every move and press circle to a super special move and win that one. I like a little bit more of a challenge than that.
So something for the boy, but not for me.
Beautifully put. And that brings us to the end of this tape. Again, Sean Mooney wraps us up, as he does so often, extremely quickly. They really did only have an hour of recording time on this one. Short play, everybody. Short play. Chris, I would normally do my awards at the end of this show, but it's all very obvious, really. All the worst matches were everything we saw afterwards. The best match, I mean, come on now, so I'm not going to bother about that. But I am going to ask you just to sum up your opinions on the tape and tell me where it ranks, whether it's a buy, whether it's a rent, whether it's a bargain bin, or, and I'm not expecting you to say this, whether it is a wipe.
So it is a rent. You know, if you've got Mania 6 and
that's the thing, isn't it?
Everyone has access to it now with the proper commentary, then you really don't need this. If you don't have Mania 6, then you would. The squash matches are fine. You know, that literally takes up like 20 minutes for 4 matches. I'd watch them again, but you know, it's not something that I'm going to be like, oh, I have to rewatch this again, like straight away. But you know, if this was one that I had on the older VHS collection, and I still had everything, it would be one that I would have to be my completionist. So I would definitely own it myself because I'm a completionist and have to do that sort of thing. But you know, it would be a rent of a rating.
Yeah, I think it's a rent for me too. Quite a safe one, really. Half of the tape is taken up with one of the most important professional wrestling matches of all time. I think we need to take that into consideration. And the rest are fun squashes against the colourful array of characters on offer for us in 1992. I don't think you can go far wrong with that, really. Breezes by otherwise. Take out the WrestleMania VI match. You're looking at about 25 minutes worth on the tape, if that. This is a very breezy, easy watch. I bashed through this one in one sitting just a couple of days ago, and it's well worth firing up to. Because as bizarre as it sounds, especially as over half the tape, as I say, is taken up with the match from April 1990, Warriors 92 is probably worth a second look. I don't think it's complete without the Savage match at SummerSlam 92, which again is excellent in my estimation. He just does what he needs to and lets the more talented guy do all the heavy lifting, but he hits his spots. Warrior was a good worker. There you go. I've said it now.
See,
Come at me, as they say.
See, it's the bit you say there about 92. I'm like trying to think, did he ever have a singles match with Flair? Because if he did, that would have been fucking wonderful.
I don't believe so.
Or like Shawn, because obviously you'd have had young, brash, just turned heel Shawn, watching him bounce off him. Or obviously Razor was just sort of then coming in, but you could have had him and Razor, him and someone like the Model as well could have been really cool.
Yeah, they would have been good matches. They would have been.
They could have done if obviously he hadn't have got up his own arse in the way that he did and started just being Jim.
Yeah.
We could have had so much more with him. That he's literally there 6 months?
Yeah.
April through to November, and he's gone. What we could have had if he'd have just kicked around for another 6 months and done a full year. He could have been in there with some of the different guys. I'm not saying putting him in there with Yogo, because obviously Yogo turns up at the end of the year, at the beginning of the year of '93 and stuff. You know, nothing like that. But you put him in there with some of the guys that could flail off him. We could have had some fucking decent matches.
I agree. It's something to think about, isn't it? Because he could do it. He really could do it at that point, and would have made WrestleMania 9 even better as well, if that's possible. But there you are. So that's the tape. Chris, that brings us to the end of this video. Short and sharp, just like the very best of the Warrior itself. So, himself. Superior being. Chris, anything else you got going on that you want to plug when you have the opportunity?
Obviously, do get on Wrestling 20 Years Ago. By the time this comes out, ECW will have been gone. The final show of ECW coming in January. We are obviously going to do some extra shows post that out of timeline. Also, sort of what could have been, should have done with some of the guys that don't get picked up. Obviously, WCW has got a little while left, but that too will be getting the same treatment.
Amazing.
But yeah, that too will get the same treatment, and I'm pretty sure that I will end up getting pulled onto some of the WCW stuff at the pre-timeline WCW
we will make sure of it, Christopher.
Because of my former podcast of going through all that shit back in the day. But other than that, oh yeah, and there's the quiz show. Listen to the quiz show.
There will be a quiz show. In fact, by the time this show drops, the quiz show will probably be available. So do watch out for that. We'll make it very easy to find for you. I will be hosting a quiz, and this was very much Chris Lacey's idea, and a great idea it was too. Because quite frankly, everybody, life in the UK is pretty shit right now. We're still in lockdown. There's no end in sight. It's bloody bollocks. So Lacey came up with the fantastic idea of doing a special Wrestling 20 Years Ago podcast quiz, which I was only too happy to agree to. I have already designed the questions. No clues, though, Chris, I'm afraid. You're going to have to wait.
Is the answer RVD and Brett versus Owen?
The answer is always RVD and Brett versus Owen. But yes, we're going to have some teams. We're going to have some fun. I've designed the questions. I will be the question master. And that will, well, as we do this, we'll be recording it 2 weeks from today, but it will already be available by the time you hear this show, so do check that out. Hope you enjoy it. I know it's going to be a lot of fun. Otherwise, Wrestling 20 Years Ago podcast. There's many more WCW shows as we have available for us, which is just 3 at time of recording. That is crazy to think about. And then we are just going to
Road Warrior Animal.
Road Warrior Animal. Just, they could have been saved, you know. They really could have been saved. Road Warrior Animal in January 01. Are you kidding me? Oh, my word. Okay.
And WCW, the gift that keeps on giving till it's dead.
And probably beyond as well. And again, there will be special WCW shows out of timeline, as you say, Chris. But from April onwards, the Wrestling 20 Years Ago podcast will mainly be going down to one timeline show only. WWF Invasion and all of that. You can also hear me on the Special Relations podcast here on the Place to Be Nation Network, my chums Ben and Callum, where we talk about all sorts of random bollocks wrestling for 2 hours every month. I was also a guest on the Mothership The Place to Be podcast with Scott and Justin, talking about Battle Royal at the Royal Albert Hall. That was a lot of fun to do, so check that out. Otherwise, that is me. Just Wrestling 20YRS on the Twitters is the best place to get in touch with me about anything, any videos you especially want me to cover. And if you want to appear on any future shows, do let me know and we can get you on. All there is left to say now is thank you once more, Chris Lacey, for joining me today.
You're more than welcome, dude. And I will be back for another one that's not so Warrior related.
You heard it here first. I heard it here first, everybody. So there we go. We will, of course, have Chris on. Always a pleasure, sir. And everybody, I will catch you again next month where we look at another Coliseum videotape. But for now, Warrior 92, I have seen your video. I'll catch you all next month.